us if you so wish. Please feel free to tweet and let everybody know how the conference going and any thoughts or ideas that you have during the day. Thank you. So the next session, let me introduce you, is is being presented by EDF, and it's about what inclusive development in volunteering will look like in 5 years. So if I introduce Loredana DC and Dr. Marion Steff will provide this presentation. Loredana is an internal communications and membership officer at EDF and is responsible for communications between EDF and the members' secretariat. Dr. Marion Steff is an international cooperation manager at EDF. Marion manages the international cooperation portfolio at the organization. She's actively engaged in advocating for inclusive development. So welcome, Loredana and DC. I'll hand it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Conrad. I hope you're hearing me well. Good afternoon. Okay, great. Good afternoon to all of you, and it is a great pleasure to being with all of you here today, and especially speaking about volunteering and how inclusive volunteering is going to look like in 5 years. That would be very interesting to go through this in this half of hour. But before starting with that, I would like to say a couple of words about our organization. Who is the European Disability Forum? What we are doing? In fact, we are the umbrella organization of persons with disabilities in the EU and mostly in the area of the European Union and the economic area, Norway and Iceland and Liechtenstein. So we have around 100 members. We've got national representations. They are the national councils of persons with disabilities, represented all EU member states and some other countries also that are not necessarily EU member states. We have also European networks of persons with disabilities. I'm giving some example: the European Blind Union, the European Union of the Deaf, and other unions of persons with disabilities. Then we have also within our membership organizations that are service providers or other organizations interested and working in a way or another with disabilities. So this is about our members. Then what we are doing lobbying, trying to influence the EU legislation, but also we are helping our members on national level to prepare and report in front of the committee that is dealing with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Awareness. So we are doing really many things. We have a whole team in Brussels and a little bit spread everywhere now with this special pandemic time. So at the end of our presentation, you have a slide with all our contact details. So don't hesitate to go and visit our website and see what we are doing. Of course, we started since some time working also on volunteering, and from my side dealing with some of the youth programs as well. One of them specifically is dealing with volunteering within Europe for young people. The European Solidarity Corps is called the program, and you will find it also on the last slide, a link to it. So this is how I am here today dealing with volunteering. But I will, I think, Marion, I have to pass to you now.
Yes, thank you so much, Loredana. And Hi everybody, I'm very pleased to be here. And I know it's a bit of, it's a conference. I don't know if you've been coming just for an hour or the whole day. So we wanted to try to be a little bit original, and we decided to have a poll. So you're going to be able to vote. We have 2 questions for you. And so a poll question is going to be appearing on your screen right now, and you're going to be able to answer yes or no. So the question is, has the organization started to be inclusive of volunteers with disabilities? So you can click on yes, and you can click on no. And then what I would like, if it's possible with technology, is to give the floor to one person who has said yes and someone who said no. Okay, so I don't know if, so we have 14 people who have voted. Oh, okay, so I can see there's a time frame. So we have, you still have 30, or I guess 20 more seconds to vote. And it's very interesting because it goes yes, it goes no. Is I don't know if you see what I see, but the results just keep changing. Okay, so 27 people have voted. So I don't know. Okay, here we go. Let's stop showing the result. Okay, that's really interesting. So we have 48 people who say yes, we started to be inclusive of volunteers with disability, and 52% of people here who said no, we haven't started to be inclusive of volunteers with disability. I would like to know if anyone would like to take the floor. I'm looking for two people, someone will say yes, someone will say no, and explain a bit what have you done and what have you not done, if it's possible. So I think the best way would be to unmute yourself and maybe put your camera on if you can. Okay, so I'm looking. Anybody who's voted would just like to express a little bit why they say yes or why they say no. Please don't be shy, because if not, it's just very kind of boring for everybody if nobody participates.
Just to give an explanation as to how, how you've included disabilities in your experience in your organization would be helpful.
Yeah.
I found it quite difficult, Shane here from VC. Okay. I found it quite difficult to answer the question because I suppose I was thinking about, what is a disability, and it sort of got me thinking. But I think in the past we would have recruited people with disabilities, but it wasn't done on purpose, if you know what I mean. It wasn't an inclusive programming situation. It was just someone happened to have a disability.
And then let me ask, did you, in that case, if you had someone, a volunteer with disability, did you prepare the hosting organization to welcome someone with disability who might need like some type of reasonable accommodations?
Colette will probably be better able to answer that, but I wouldn't have thought that we did anything too untoward with the individual that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
When we deployed the volunteer, we didn't actually have the knowledge or the wherewithal to actually prepare the partner fully, and that would have caused issues at deployment stage on the ground. So it was a huge learning right from the get-go. So it's all about learning. So then that informs your practices going forward as well. But also the partner would have learned from it. Mm-hmm. And my only fear is that you don't prepare the partner, they have a negative experience, or they see it as something negative if you don't prepare and build the relationship ahead of time. So we had a lot of learning from that. I'm just seeing a message there from Louise in CBM that we have somebody here from Turning Point in Bangladesh. Perhaps they might want to contribute to this conversation.
Ah, yes, message from Lou. Turning Point from Bangladesh. Do you have anything you want to share with us?
They'd have to unmute themselves.
Yes, you may have to unmute.
I don't think so. Farhad
No,
is
it's all right. I was yeah. I mean we can elaborate a little bit, but I think yeah the reality is actually it's not necessarily easy to actively you know recruit or volunteers with disability, and I've seen myself. I've been a volunteer myself in the past, and I think it was very interesting the comment I had when I was actually on the ground, for instance, where I face you know, an issue with attitude and discrimination, because, for instance, I will always remember someone, it's actually a professor at the university, but he was telling me, but actually when you weren't there, it was easy because all the students with disability, they were all in the same classroom at the university. And then I was explaining that, you know, one student with disability maybe wants to learn journalism and the other one might want to be a math teacher, etc. So you cannot just group all the students with disability in one room. And he was saying, oh, it's so much easier when you were not there. So, you know, for me, it was a bit shocking to hear that. But in a sense, you know, I was learning, and I also realized that the people on the ground, you know, learn a lot as well. And then we've seen a beautiful progression at the end of that one-year project. I'm going to pass the floor to my colleague Loredana. She has another question. So be ready to vote.
Yeah.
So again, a poll. Can someone launch it for me, please? So do you think that virtual online volunteering can work for persons with disabilities in the future? Yeah, this becomes now more and more frequently used because we are obliged. So it would be interesting to know, what do you think about? Yeah. Are the answers coming, Marion? Maybe you can help me a little bit describing the result.
So we have 31 people who voted, 32, and for the moment is almost 100% of yes.
Yes.
So we have.
Are we still waiting, or we closing?
Yes, we're waiting in about another 10 seconds, I believe.
Yes. Great. Thank you so much for being so active.
And then, yes, so we have 37 people who voted yes. Virtual or online volunteering can work for people with disability. So it's 95%.
Yes, that's very good. I mean, you should dare say also no, that's normal. So thank you. We close the poll. Thank you very much. And I would like to hear someone who said no. Please dare to raise either your hand or put in the chat your name so that we can, Marion can say your name and you can take the floor, because we are interested. I mean, there is for sure a good reason why you say no. And afterwards, I will give the floor to someone who said yes.
It's two people who said no.
Yes, can you give the floor to one of them? Can you see who said no, maybe? Take one of them.
Edwidge, yes, please go ahead, Edwidge.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
yes.
I said no because of technology, really. The internet, like they had to reach areas, we do not have very good internet connection.
Yes.
That's all, but I think it would be possible if we had better internet connection. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Edwidge. That's great. And someone who said yes, please.
Let me just comment as well.
Yes,
Loredana, it's Conrad here. I know with the first poll, you didn't get a lot of responses, but I might just add, because I said yes, is that my background is not in the sector, the volunteering sector, but in business, working as an accountant. I always remember the day when we had a person with a disability. In other words, they were on wheelchair, as an example, came into the office to do accounting work. And, you know, that person was a fully qualified accountant and was working remotely, helping our subsidiaries. So essentially an office job, like a finance person sitting at a desk, you know, doing accounts in the cloud, because a lot of accounting is now done in the cloud or up in servers that are not necessarily, you know, in the developing countries. So, you know, it's a good example of how, you know, you can have remote working in a sort of an office-based professional sort of work. Just as an example, I thought I'd throw that into you.
Yes.
And I do believe that there are huge opportunities, but we need to think very carefully about what type of roles can be best served through the internet, because not all roles are best served through the internet. Just to throw that out to you.
Indeed. Thank you so much to all of you for your participation in the second poll. Indeed, as Rich said, that technology, the lack of a good internet connection, the lack of technology, people not having the means to buy it, and the knowledge to use those technologies, yeah, will be for sure a barrier, and the accessibility of what is used, I mean the platforms or whichever works. So this is very important to take into account. And the second point is, yes, it will give many people opportunities, though we should pay attention not to make norm of online and virtual activity, whether it is volunteering or working. The ideal, from my personal experience, is a mix of both, because each way of working, it has its pros and contras. And I think this is for the part with our polls. Thank you. And then I will go forward to our short presentation, Marion, I think, directly, not to lose too much time. So thank you very much. We would like to
I share my screen. I hope you all see my screen.
Yes.
And then it's ready, Loredana.
Yeah. So in the world, 50% of the population, which is around 1 billion people, can you imagine, they are persons with disabilities. This is quite a lot. We are one of the biggest minority, and though we are still struggling with many things, and much more should be done. And we are so many people, and we could raise much better our voices. And this is why such organizations like ours and all our other regional organizations, they have an important role in the disability movement and in getting our rights. And 80% of this population with disabilities are to be found in development countries. Persons with disabilities are consistently excluded from humanitarian aid and from development projects, and not only, but even from this kind of crisis, a humanitarian crisis like the one we are living now, where we asked what is good for us or not. No one came to us, unfortunately. Maybe in some countries they were, let's say, they had more chance and they were asked. And because this is often the case, we stood up at one point and we said, it is our motto, the motto of the disability movement. Well, we do not we don't want things anymore done for us, because we want them to be done with us. We want nothing about us without us, because we are people. We have also our own personality, our own thoughts, and not only thoughts, but also capacities. And we are, in fact, citizens like any other persons. So this is for sure very important. And because I'm coming, I said that, yeah, we are citizens, but then we should also be aware that we have rights as citizens. And since now more than a decade, we have already something that helps us, a legal a legislation, a legal background. This is a convention, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which was ratified by the European Union and by all its member states, by all EU countries, and by many countries in the world. You can go on the website of the UN and check this for sure. And so we moved from a paternalistic approach and charity approach, where, you know, we were considered like the ones who need help, who need assistance. We want now also to say that we can do it also ourselves if the proper measures are put in place and all barriers are taken away. And this is very important to know, that we are human beings with rights and obligations, and not only some recipients. We can also give, not only receive. And this is the main message to say. And to make sure that our rights are respected, we have to also let people know about them, and to be strong in our claims. So this is for sure very important. And further, other legislation is available, and Marion will speak about some more things that are available for us. Marion?
Thank you so much, Loredana. And I think it's worth mentioning that in the CRPD, so the Convention of Persons with Disabilities,
yes,
we have Article 4, which really relates to the participation of people with disabilities at all levels of society. So it's absolutely essential. And we also have Article 11 that focuses on humanitarian action and crisis. And of course, Article 32 in international cooperation. So, you know, the convention, if you want, is really what we follow at EDF and the global disability movement in general. So, of course, there's many other frameworks, and we are at EDF, we're not specialized in humanitarian aid, and we're not specialized in volunteering aid either. And that's why we work closely with, you know, VC or TIOFOUND or CBM, Abilis, etc., because we want to improve ourselves. But of course, I wanted to come back to you with just some frameworks. So in the EU, we have the European Consensus on Humanitarian Aid. It's a bit updated, not much on disability, but still. We have the Charter on the Inclusion of Persons with Disability in Humanitarian Action. And the DJ ECHO operational guidance that was actually launched just last year. So DJ ECHO is in the EU, the department focusing on humanitarian action and crisis. So they have this document about the inclusion of persons with disability in all EU-funded humanitarian operation. And I think what they all have in common is the fact that everybody should be involved in the making of decision. So I've got a small quote here that I'm going to read from the European Consensus on Humanitarian Aid. That's the following: all affected people should be treated as dignified, capable human beings rather than as helpless objects. The way aid is provided may be as important than aid itself. affected population should participate in the making of decisions that affect their lives. Participation is both a universal right and good management practice. And I think this quote actually, says it all. And of course, when we talk about global policy framework, I could not mention the Yas Guidelines. So the Yas Guidelines stand for the Interagency Standing Committee. And then, in a sense, is a document that set out essential action related to inclusion of people with disability in humanitarian action. And I wanted to show you 3 examples that I took from the guidelines. For instance, information should be disseminated in multiple accessible formats: oral, print, sign language, easy to read, plain language. And we really think at EDF that if you have someone, for instance, with a disability, like a volunteer with disability, that person's gonna really know how to guide, the staff on the ground in any humanitarian action settings to really think about the different accessible format. Another example is related to distribution site. And we believe that, and it's written in the Yas Guideline, that the distribution site should be placed in locations that are accessible to everyone, including volunteers, persons with disability. And of course, you know very well that that's not going to benefit, people with disability, but that's going to benefit a whole range of other people, let's say like older people, for instance. And of course, in humanitarian action setting, latrine is always something absolutely essential and crucial. So the example here is the following. Communal latrine blocks should be physically accessible to volunteers, persons with disability, with clear signage. So this is about a bit of the policy framework. And of course, we had a question: what does, inclusive volunteering will look like in humanitarian action in 5 years now? So I'm going to give back the floor to my colleague Loredana. And of course, we just put some examples here, but I'm sure you have lots of ideas as well.
Exactly. So for sure, one of the things which is the most relevant in 5 years, we think that, for example, all EU volunteering programs should be uniformized, and that they offer the same things, and that they are inclusive of persons with disabilities, so that the good practices from one programs are taken into the other programs, and even in the same programs, that all types of volunteering action should have the same provisions. Then we would like for sure provisions in all volunteering legislations in the EU member states to have provisions for persons with disabilities, and here making possible also to get a volunteering allowance and a disability allowance at the same time, because sometimes this can be can hinder some people becoming volunteers, because they are afraid they will lose their disability allowance and their security. Diversification of volunteering areas for persons with disabilities. And here it is important to have more openness from all structures working within with volunteers. And sending and hosting organizations, if it is about mobility and volunteering, but not only, because it can be also local organizations that are hosting volunteering. They should be receiving training sessions about inclusiveness and how to be inclusive to get this support. And all practices they should be inclusive. Volunteers with disabilities should get an additional allowance within in the mobility program, so the mobility volunteering programs, just for example, like within the Erasmus So the Erasmus exchanges for students, or not only, where students with disabilities, they can get an allowance to cover additional costs linked to disabilities, for example, sign language interpreter, but it can be for personal assistance or any other need that the person could have. And then on the last, the one before last slide, we included some interesting programs. So we included some useful links for you. Have a look, take a look, go deepen into these issues, and we hope that this was useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Loredana. That's really wonderful. That was wonderful. Through that, I know we're running a bit, so I'm going to run quickly into the next session, and I know people will be quite keen to get in questions to you. So if we can fit those in at the end, we'll try and fit them in. So thanks very much, Marion and Loredana. So the next presentation is from ASPEm. The next presentation is from ASPEm. We've got Erica and Camilla. Erica Valentini is responsible for European projects and youth mobility at ASPEm, and Camilla looks after the global citizenship education within our organization. So I can welcome the two speakers on. I'll let you kick off, and we'll try and get questions and answers from both sides if we can at the end. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me share my screen first. So our presentation today is about inclusive volunteering, and with a Latin American perspective. We, as ASPEm, we've been working for many years in Latin America, and one of our pillars is as well volunteering. As an organization, we were born as a group of volunteers who served abroad. So volunteering is still a core element for us, as we think volunteering, especially for youth, is a great experience to know the world, to be exposed to different cultures, experience different contexts, and when they are back, to be catalysts for change in their own communities. So we work, of course, with volunteers directly, but also we work in close collaboration with the organization we deploy volunteers to. Most of the time they are local organizations in different continents, and we work with them as well to better prepare the organization itself to receive the volunteers. And we've been deploying volunteers abroad for about 20 years now, and I must say that our experience with volunteers with disabilities is very limited. And in the past year, through this project and the other partners of this that organized also this conference, we have been reflecting on what it means to be inclusive and how to adapt our work in order to be inclusive. And when we think at the Latin American context, one of the questions that I was always having in mind as I was preparing also this presentation and to share with you was really to the challenge of being inclusive in our volunteering work in a context where still being inclusive is not something that is really actual. So just to start, I want to share with you a video that now my colleagues will share, and they present is a witness from Catalina de Vandas Aguilar, who was the first special rapporteur on the rights of persons with disabilities, and she served from 2014 to 2020. Can you let the video on?
When I was little, I once heard my grandmother talking about me. She didn't know that I was there listening, and she said, "What a pity, my little girl. She has such a beautiful face, but nobody will want her." I was born with spina bifida. That means that since I was little, I wasn't able to walk very well. I grew up in Costa Rica, a small, beautiful country in Latin America, and there I always felt loved and supported by my family. I grew up like any other kid. I just played, I went to school, I learned to swim. Once I was asked, "What part of your body would you change if you could?" And my answer was, none. I was happy. I was free, and I was encouraged to do whatever I wanted. Yet later in life, when my first daughter was born, my father was holding her in his arms, and he told my mother, "I never dreamt this moment was going to be possible." And I was surprised, because I thought my grandmother belonged to another generation. But my father, my loving father, the one that told me that there were no limits, he couldn't believe that I was going to be a mother.
So what we heard is a positive witness from a person who's actually from Latin America and managed to be included in their society and to live at her potential at full. But what we know from data, though they are not really accurate data about disability in Latin America, tell us that there are a lot of people with disability. It's about 85 million. That means 13% of the population. That means that almost everybody knows somebody, be it a family member, a relative, a neighbor, a friend. Same time, their living conditions are really poor, and the support that they receive is not often enough. And they face unemployment, lack of access to services, isolation and marginalization. And most of the time, these people already live in poverty conditions that are, of course, being also living with a disability may be deteriorating further such living conditions. So once again, when we think about this situation and the need for inclusive volunteering, give us the idea of many challenges that we have to work on. And before deepening a bit on that, I would like still to go back to the words of Catalina de Vandas Aguilar to give some more input.
And I've been in very different countries, in all the continents, in Asia, in Europe, in Africa, Latin America, North America, rich countries, poor countries, less and more developed countries. And what it's interesting is that all around, the challenges that we face as persons with disabilities are very similar. And here are some of our shared frustrations. Many of us feel excluded, out of schools and without jobs. Many feel undervalued. You know, in some places, people with disabilities cannot vote. Many feel angry because they cannot leave their houses or use public transportation. Some want to form families and have partners, but they're not expected to. And some are tired. We're tired of people feeling sorry for us because we don't like pity. And much too often, decisions are made for us. We're not allowed to decide what we want to do with our lives. Others have the power over us, or we can decide for us. It could be doctors, it could be professionals, it could be teachers, it could be even caregivers. And this, again, is not something that happens only in the poor countries against the rich countries or in the more democratic countries against the less democratic countries. No, this happens everywhere.
What the video showed us, so it's a situation where people have limited support, and they face many challenges. And thinking at the Latin American context, one major point is that for a long time, the term disability was mainly meant as a physical or medical problem. So inclusive meant, being inclusive meant to provide technical support, while the social aspect of it, so the capacity not only to maybe to get medical assistance, but to be able to go to school or to vote, as she mentioned in the video, or to have a relationship with friends, colleagues. It's really difficult, and this is something that has gained attention in recent years, and now there are movements and researches and studies on how to be more inclusive, also considering awareness raising, lobbying, to have policies in place to support people with disability. Another aspect that we face in Latin America in general, but also thinking at our work with volunteers, are the physical barriers. And of course, there are different contexts. Latin America is a continent, so we have differences between different countries, or within the same country between rural or urban areas, where some infrastructures may be better, but in other cases, if we can think at the Andean context, it's very difficult to have accessible roads, or sometimes buildings are really old, so there are a lot of barriers for people. Before it was mentioned also the issue of internet. Communication may not be easy, so accessing maybe devices that can aid persons with disability may not be available or working. But the other main point are also the cultural barriers. We heard from the two videos, while there are improvement on certain aspects, sometimes the mentality is still difficult to change, and we still believe that people with disability may not deserve certain to be part of certain activities, or it's not worthy for them to go to school. So this is still something that blocks being inclusive, and this also affects our work in terms of volunteering, and this is something that we face in our work many times. As we think of deploying volunteers and organization to receive volunteers, we think that the volunteer is something that is going to bring a change, and is someone that knows it all in a way, or can fix problems, or it's really coming to give a help. And if we think as an organization that we need to maybe invest a lot of resources or additional resources to welcome a person with disability, may be discouraged because it is a lot of work. And this is something we have experienced also as this year we've been through this process of rethinking about how we could be inclusive. Is something that demands a lot of work, but it's something also that we are not always prepared to do, because maybe we face problems as they appear, but we are not proactive because we are not so exposed to disability. So we react rather than be proactive. So in this context, what opportunity for us, and this is our experience this year, but it's also how we are trying to move forward, is really to listen to the volunteers. Of course, giving particular attention to the specific needs of people with disabilities, but also to the volunteers in general. Whenever we work, I said before, we work with organizations, so we share with them what best practices could be, but not so many times maybe we listen to the volunteers first and see what they expect. We expect a lot from them, but not all the time we have time to listen to them. And this is an exercise that we have started doing this year. I'm gonna show you as well a video that we have realized with one of our volunteers, and it was an eye-opener for us, because we in this case we are not talking about disability as such, but the volunteer was raising a lot of aspects that for us may be common when we think of deploying or receiving volunteers, and we realized that sometimes you have to really think carefully. So I'll just let my colleagues play the video, and then I can conclude.
Buenos días, me llamo Jean, soy de Francia y llevo casi un año siendo EOA Volunteers en la Fundación Munacin Cuyaquita en Bolivia. Hoy les voy a hablar de lo que necesita un voluntario al llegar a su lugar de despliegue. Primero, la llegada al aeropuerto. Llegar a un país nuevo siempre es algo un poco raro. Para mí es muy importante que alguien de la organización de acogida vaya a recoger al voluntario al aeropuerto para acompañarlo hasta el departamento o la casa en la que va a vivir. Segundo, el departamento o la casa. Al llegar a su nuevo hogar, el voluntario debería recibir sus propias llaves. Parece obvio, pero no lo es siempre. Se debería contar ya con el servicio de internet para poder comunicarse con nuestra familia en nuestro país. También utensilios para cocinar, sábanas para la cama, espacio para guardar nuestra ropa en el cuarto y para nuestra comida en la cocina. Según el clima, puede ser necesario o hasta vital tener algo para el frío, como más cobijas o una estufa, o para el calor, como un ventilador. Y siempre es más agradable llegar a un lugar limpio. Tercero, los lugares importantes, tipo supermercados, banco, transporte, hospital. Obviamente los primeros días vamos a ir descubriendo el barrio, pero hay algunas cosas que más vale saber directamente. Por ejemplo, el nombre de los supermercados y dónde están ubicados, saber dónde encontrar bancos y cajeros sirve mucho, sobre todo si no hemos podido cambiar dinero antes. Puede servir también saber dónde hay farmacias y hospitales, y si es uno que tiene convenio con Signa, todavía mejor. Y finalmente, si el transporte público no es demasiado complicado, conocer los puntos donde tomar el bus para ir al centro, o las estaciones de teleférico, de metro, de tranvía. Es útil tener toda esa información en un mapa para ya empezar a entender un poco la ciudad en la que vamos a vivir. Cuarto, los contactos de la organización de acogida, policía, emergencias. Si podemos tener un chip para el celular desde el inicio, es lo mejor. Si no, es bueno indicarle al voluntario las diferentes opciones de compañía de teléfono según la calidad de la red, los precios, etc. De ahí se pueden dar todos los números importantes por si necesitamos algo. Por ejemplo, 1 o 2 contactos de la organización de acogida, el número de la policía en caso de robo o agresión y de las emergencias. Y quinto, iniciar el trabajo. Para mí es fundamental que las personas de la organización de acogida sepan que está llegando un voluntario, cuánto tiempo va a estar y en qué va a trabajar. Si se planifican bien 1 o 2 semanas de inducción al inicio para conocer a las colegas, las diferentes áreas de la organización, el voluntario se sentirá más rápido parte de. Definitivamente sentirse bien acogido al llegar ayuda a iniciar bien el voluntariado y la estancia en un país nuevo. Gracias a todos por su atención.
So this is an exercise that we've done, and of course it could be applied also to being more inclusive of people with disability. So this is for us is an opportunity that we would like to go on with. The other aspect that we think with this exercise is that, of course, working at inclusive volunteering through this program and of course continuing after this, it's also an opportunity to advocate for inclusion at large, so to bring inclusiveness also in other aspects of our work and in the context where we work. Thank you.
Thank you, Enrique. That was fantastic. That was fantastic and so personal, and you brought home the whole, so you brought it closer to home as to how this impacts on the individual volunteer with a disability. Really fantastic. Thank you very much for that. And also thank you, Loredana and Marion as well. I don't know if we've got time. We've actually run out of time now in terms of questions. I might just have a quick look at if any questions have come in particular. Just let's have a look. Do you have any existing programs where persons with disabilities can volunteer and receive proper accommodation to make their experiences meaningful and positive? I guess in general, how do you cater for, you know, for people with disabilities coming in and volunteering? Enrique, just quick, a short answer would be fine, and then we move on to the next section. We've got a short break then. Hello? Loredana's.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I know that in the European Union we have a program which is called the European Solidarity Corps, and it's a program for young people. And this program welcomes, of course, persons with disabilities, and some hosting organizations, they put in place even some accommodating measures, like adapting a little bit the program in the beginning of the volunteer, and looking for a personal assistant for the volunteer when they need. And this program supports persons with disabilities for sure. This is one of the example I know. I did myself. I was volunteer in the program that was before this program, the European Volunteers, the EVS European Voluntary Service was called. I did myself a volunteering project in 2005. So no, yes, they are.
Thank you. That's interesting. And the EU then presumably are taking introduce measures to support the people with disabilities. I guess they've got specific programs and training for those individuals. Is that right?
It is the program for all young people. What is special within the program, for example, they put some measure like the possibility to have an advanced planning visit. So the person with someone from the organization can go in advance and visit the volunteering project and make the last setups. This is an example, and there are other measures too, but also they can give money, credit money to costs linked to disability. I mean, there is always place for improvement, but I think it's already not bad.
Great, thank you very much. So we have a number of other questions in, but we don't have the time to answer them. So we will respond to the individuals by email afterwards. Yes. So thank you very much, all three of you, for speaking. It was absolutely fantastic. We'll have a five-minute break if we come back at 10 past 2, and we'll start the second session. So thank you.